Hi everyone, my name is Jamilia and I'm here with João Santos. We're here to talk about Black History Month and in particular Black queer history. So thank you, João, for being with me
today.
Thank
you for having me.
You're welcome. I feel like I'm Oprah today, so yes, I'm excited. But I think the first question I really wanted to ask you is that usually Black queer history is seen as a very separate thing to Black History Month. Why do you think that should change and actually we should kind of align them together?
I think both communities go through a lot, like in their own way, but a lot of the achievements that both had come from the same intersection. So Black queer people, Angela Davis being a lesbian or Marsha P. Johnson being a trans woman, both achieved so much for their own communities. And I think it's really bad when you wash that history over, because then us that are in the middle, we're part of both, it's hard to relate. So we spoke about this before.
Yeah.
Many queer Black men don't feel safe around Black men. And why is that? Like, we both go through a lot of the struggles of being Black, and some of us just don't feel safe. And then you also have the issue of not relating as much to the queer community, because there's a lot of racism in it as well. So when you highlight the intersection and you showcase how much they're both really linked, I think it's beneficial for both sides, because then you can identify better, like, within the intersection.
Absolutely. I think especially for me, why I noticed that need for intersectionality in this space through watching shows like Pose, which we've both spoken about as well before, in a sense where it is very hard for people to pick and choose because you're pushed away by both communities. So I remember in one section of Pose, there was actually the Black trans woman went into a gay bar, and at the time gay bars were predominantly just white gay men who benefit from the privilege of being white and a man, but obviously can identify and form a space with the oppression of being gay. But the issue is that they weren't accepted into that space. They're also not accepted into the Black community for various reasons. Some to do with religion and culture. So then they're pushed away from that community and they're completely isolated.
Yeah, it's a real struggle, really, because being a minority, like, you can relate to the fact of being excluded, of not being allowed into places, of being looked down, or someone clutching a purse, or someone changing the side of the street. Like, those are struggles that both communities, not in the same way, but the idea is there. Like, we so often get discriminated against, and it's really hard when both can't really not see eye to eye. That's not really what I'm trying to say, but it's kind of like they don't recognize the struggles. Like, it really hurts my feelings when I see a Black man being homophobic, because in a way he knows the struggles of being discriminated against, and yet he does those things. And the same thing with the queer community, where they're racist, and you're also a minority, so highlighting this, and especially in the Black History Month, highlighting Black queer history, I think it's a great way to kind of get those ideas out of both communities and kind of show how much we are alike in a way of we have similarities, but also there's people that are in between, so there's people that are Black and aren't queer. So I think it's a great thing what we're doing here, and what you've been doing with Black History Month as well.
Thank you. Just name drop me in a little bit. I like that. So we've definitely been talking about duplicity. So I'd really like to ask you about how do you deal personally with the duplicity of your identity, in the sense of you're a Black man, you're also a mixed race man, but you're also a gay man. And how do you deal with all of that and being able to navigate that in the space that you're currently in?
Yeah, I think it's a journey, and I've come a long way on mine, and as I told you before, I wasn't always able to accept my Blackness or explore it even by being mixed race. I didn't have a lot of the Black influence when I was growing up, so I don't know how to put a do-rag. I don't know a lot about Black hair, and it's just now I feel like I'm getting to a place that I'm able to find my own identity, because as much as you can name it, as in I'm mixed race, I'm queer, I have to find my own space within it, and my experience will be totally different from another person. It's always like a learning experience of kind of like exploring yourself and allowing yourself the time to get there, and once you get there, it's a really comfortable place.
That's amazing. Like, I'm really encouraged to hear that, because the reason why we did this whole video, we had this idea, is to help and enable other Black queer people to feel that they can come here and feel like it's a safe space and explore their gender identity, their gender expression, and their sexuality as much as they can and as much as they feel like they're able to. Because I know that's not always possible in certain cultural contexts, and that can leave people feeling very alienated and alone. And like, that's why I appreciate people like you, because you're so open and you're honest about your journey, and I hope that inspires other people to be open and
that's
honest.
the whole point that we were starting, why do this video in the first place, is how when I was 16, 17, I didn't have the confidence that I have today, and I didn't know that by coming to university I would have a space that I could just explore myself and allow myself the time and the space to go to socials, to go to different societies and find my own truth within it. So there are a lot of kids now that are hopeless, and they don't really see that they can explore either their blackness or their queerness. They have to shut one down or both, and it's really heartbreaking when you think that. But maybe they can take this as in, like, it will get better and you will get to a place that you can explore yourself and find your identity and find comfort in bits and parts of your identity as well, and kind of make your own within it.
Absolutely. So within that, like, how were you able to, you know, feel a part of the queer community, the black community, or the black queer community in general within Liverpool? Were there any, like, societies or organisations that you're a part of that made you feel more comfortable in your identity and made you feel comfortable to explore it?
Yeah, I feel like when I came to university, I've told you this before as well, it was the first time that I could actually be out and proud with my sexuality. So first year was really good to kind of like get me to go to gay clubs, consume gay culture, things that I didn't really know. I didn't fully know the Madonna songs. I didn't know all of those like important and funny aspects about the queer community. So it was the first time that I actually explored that. Finding my blackness within, it's more of a slow process. So it's kind of like learning, doing my research, and being around black people. When I used to live in Portugal, there was not a lot of a big black community. So being in university and having black friends and kind of like engaging different culture, we're black, but we also have different backgrounds. If I'm black Latino, like people are black African, the Caribbean, it's kind of like you find this mix and you learn from it, and it's a really joyful experience.
Absolutely. Like, all of our identities are multifaceted. Like, you can be black, but then that doesn't mean that you'll understand every single segment of being black. Because for me, I'm black African, but somebody else is going to be maybe even black Asian or black something else, and that's fine. And I think it's about acknowledging those different areas and making sure that we're including as much people as we possibly can. And that kind of leads me to my next question is, how do, in your opinion, how can people be good allies to people who are minorities, especially those who are part of multiple minorities? Like, what do you think would be best for people who are not in that space? What can they do to help people like you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing that the minorities, are not just one homogenous group. We're all different, and we all come from different backgrounds, as you said. So it's really frustrating when we're called others, or just like when we sign forms and it's just like other, it's just like the rest of it. So it kind of washes over like the fact that we are a very like plural, very diverse community. So recognizing that if you see a black person, they're not just going to be this stereotype, this set of rules. Like, you might encounter a black queer person, you might encounter like so many other aspects of the black community that you need to realize that we're not all the same. And once you do that, you can kind of like form your allyship and inform yourself better about all these different aspects about the black experience, and kind of like go from there. Really, I think the first step is inform yourself and recognizing our plurality.
Absolutely. I think you definitely touched on a great point in the sense of we need people to go out there and educate themselves. And that isn't only just like white people or people outside of the community, even in the black community, that's an issue where we don't recognise the polarity of people's identity, and that leaves people to feel very alienated from our own community. And I think the reason why I really wanted to focus on that facet this Black History Month as well is because I remember speaking to a friend who doesn't go to this university, who felt that they couldn't join Afro-Caribbean society because they didn't feel black enough, but he also couldn't join LGBT society because he was too black. And then because of that, he was alienated from both groups and couldn't join. So it's about actually understanding within our own community, especially in this case, the LGBT community and the black community, needs to do more to make people feel comfortable and safe in that space.
Yeah, it's really to promote the idea of inclusivity, and that like it doesn't really make sense that like minorities wouldn't be inclusive, because that's the whole point of what we want to achieve on both fronts. So yeah, so far at university I've worked with Jamilia in many projects for both societies. When you were in the Afro-Caribbean society, when I was in the LGBT society, and to kind of promote that bonds, that link, and then encourage those people that can't really relate fully to one or the other to engage and to get out there, explore. They might not find they relate more to one than the other, but kind of to be like, oh, I didn't know this about my identity. I didn't know that I actually identify as this more than that, or find more about the sexuality, because I feel like in the black community there's not enough encouragement to be like, even if you're just gay, like there's so much more, like you can be asexual, transsexual. It's so many transgender. Sorry, there's so many other levels to it, and you encourage them to go and find that about themselves, and their experience would be much more pleasant, and find their identity would be easier.
Absolutely. There's just so much to be like picked on this topic because but yes, that for me, when you brought up transgender people, I think there is that issue of even within the LGBT community, they're also alienated from that for a host of various different reasons, because that's misunderstood. Which I do think is getting better today. But then if you're trans, but also a trans woman, and then also black, but then also was brought up in a Muslim community, that whole duplicity of your identity just completely like means that you're alienated from so many different groups, and you are forced at some point that you just have to kind of pick one.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
And it's counterproductive when you think about it. Like, all these communities should, what we're doing in Black History Month and with this queer segment, it's kind of like look into the communities and be like, we need to be inclusive of multiple identities as well, and that applies to many other communities, not just the Black queer community. So I think it's really great that we touch on this subject, kind of push this idea of inclusivity and kind of like recognizing multiple identities.
Absolutely. So I was just asking about what people can do as an individual. Now it's a big question: what can institutions do to change that, and to also make Black queer people and people who have multiple identities in general feel more comfortable in their spaces?
Yeah, I think a great start when we talk about corporations is supporting Black businesses, and kind of, because you can talk as much as you want, but you kind of need to get the check out there. You need to support the community, you need to employ Black queer people and support these artists, and that's really the best way that big corporations can support it, because as much as they release statements or do PR things, and it's not what we need. What we need is to support the community, and the best way to do it is supporting businesses. But also, I feel like in general, recognizing the fact that there's more than one minority, because we've spoke about this before, how we just called the other. Yeah. And it's, if you recognize there's so much more than just a straight, white, cis narrative, like you can kind of like give more spaces for Black queer voices, for example, to kind of stand up and be like, right, you're just not trying to label me as one thing, but because you recognize that plurality, I can kind of like explore and kind of identify, present myself in a way that I'm more comfortable with and aligns more with my identity.
Absolutely. Definitely. I just think what needs to happen on institutions is getting rid of that other. Yeah. There is this thing in a lot of institutions, not just education, but in big corporations as well, where everything that is not white and cis and straight is put straight into other, and that causes everyone who's a minority to be lumped in together and not seen as individual pieces or bodies. And that's an issue there, because the Black experience is completely different to the Asian experience in Britain. forget even in other countries. And then if you add other minority identities onto that, that completely changes the entire experience and might change why we're getting certain information from these kind of people, but not these kind of people. And that's the issue. You can't just lump us all together and feel like you've done a good job by recognizing that there are others. It just doesn't make sense. So I definitely agree with you on that point. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I think, and by doing that as well, like, we can, it just will encourage people to explore themselves and to be more comfortable in their own skin and don't have to be like, feel the need to be part of one community. And we can kind of like shape ourselves and shape our own communities and just accept diversity, really.
Absolutely. And also another great thing is that there's so many organisations out there that are trying to support minority people, in particular Black queer people, and making them feel comfortable in their sexuality, in their gender expression, in their gender identity. And I think that is so important, and it's about making sure that these institutions are actually supporting that. Again, as you said, putting money into it, putting their money where their mouth is, because that's what's important. And also just kind of, I would say, like, derooting the system of oppression that we currently have, in the sense where this system was created for those who are privileged. And it's only those who are privileged that can also help to completely deroot the system. And although that might not benefit them in the end, in a sense where I did before, but it will give everybody a chance to succeed and to make it rather than just one group of people. So I definitely agree with that.
100%,
I just want to thank you so much for coming to talk to me. I really appreciate it, and I really think this is going to help a lot of people and make so many people feel so comfortable. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I honestly, when you invited me for this project and you told me your ideas, I was 100% down for it. I think you have so many great visions for the university in general, so I think the best person to do this Black History Month this year was you, so I'm glad you...
So I just want to thank you, João, for coming and speaking to us today. Like, this is going to be so helpful for so many people and make them feel much more comfortable in our spaces. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. When you reached out for this project, I was excited. I was like, I'm 100% down. I feel like this is important, and more to encourage these students that come here and have the space and the freedom to explore themselves. To know that at university, it might not be perfect 100%. There's always struggles on the way. But it generally can be a very nice space to explore their identity, find their own place within the communities and within society as well. So I think it's a really great thing that you're doing here.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone that this Black History Month, I've been working so hard at the Guild to make sure that we are celebrating Black people to the fullest and making sure that we're creating some legacy and some intent behind this as well. So this will not be the last time that you'll see Black faces just because it's October. Hopefully we'll be doing lots of events throughout the year, but please do get involved. This is a time, as we've said here today, to support Black people, to ensure that we are helping minorities, especially those who belong to multiple minorities. So thank you for watching today and seeing my face and João's.
Period.
Period.